Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I am your host, JP John Posh from the Two-Man Power Trip. And of course, joining me is my co-host, Mr. Trump Mania himself, Mr. Lavi Margolin. Lavi, what's going on today, sir?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. Happy President's Week. You know, sometimes as the world is changing or reawakening, I guess, it's hard to fully embrace these holidays. But one thing that I do know is that my children are off from school. So that keeps me grounded in being aware of what's going on.
Yes, very true. And we have a very, very special guest today. He is the man kind of running things for AAA. He's the Director General of Lucha Libra AAA, Mr. Dorian Roldán. Mr. Roldán, how you doing?
Everything fine, John. Thank you very much for receiving me here in your podcast.
Hi, Dorian. It's Lavi. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really looking forward to this.
No, it's a pleasure, Lavi.
So obviously, you know, I feel like Triple Mania is kind of like the big event for AAA, but really just kind of before we kind of get into Triple Mania and even Reyes and stuff like that, like what's kind of going on in your world as far as AAA right now?
Well, basically, we are just, how do you say, coming back in track after a really difficult pandemic situation. Something that is really different in the wrestling industry in Mexico against the American world or even the Japanese world is that basically a lot part of the revenue comes from the live events, you know. So it was really difficult times. Right now we are really excited that finally we can start to produce our live events in different parts of Mexico. And we are also really excited because at this moment we are closing again some sponsorship agreements, some media rights agreements, and at the end of the day, has been a really, really difficult 2 years, but there are many, many projects, and we are putting all those projects under one umbrella that is the 30th anniversary of AAA as a company.
Speaking of that 30th anniversary, I mean, what does that mean to you and to your family? Because, I mean, that's huge, 30 years.
Well, basically, I was born and raised in this industry, you know. So basically, it's my whole life. Even before these 30 years, I have been involved and I have been going to the shows at Arena Mexico and all that stuff because my uncle used to be a top executive in CMLL. So I have been born and raised. I don't know another world that is not the wrestling world. But as you can imagine, basically for us as a family, for my mother, for myself, it's basically how we are going to celebrate and to give a tribute to all those people, not just my uncle and my father, also all those people who are behind a company and all the difficulties over 30 years of being in the road. So interesting times. Of course, we are going to bring some nostalgia to our shows, and it's exactly where we are right now.
Man, it's crazy. Kind of, you know, you grew up in the business 30 years. You kind of don't know anything else, right? I mean, you just know wrestling.
Exactly. Let me tell you, I study economics and law when I was in the university, but my whole life has been involved around people from television, production, traveling, in hotels. So that's the world that I know.
So as far as this year, why this year to have the Triple Mania expand and kind of take place in 3 different events? Is that because it's 30 years, or is there other reasons why Triple Mania is kind of growing and becoming a bigger event?
I can give you 3 reasons. The first one is, of course, it's part of the strategy that we are using for the 30 years of AAA. Of course, also, if you remember the AAA history, Triple Mania 3 was in 3 different locations. So for my family, for my uncle, for my grandma, for my mother, the number 3 is super special. You know? So of course, in this 30th anniversary, we were trying to figure out how to bring more revenue to the table, and to put 3 Triple Manias in different places sounds like a good plan. We were producing Triple Mania Regia, that basically it's the Monterrey version of Triple Mania 2 years before, has been a total successful. And right now we are going to try to make a copy of that in Tijuana. So it's a perfect moment, no? You have 3 different venues, 3 different cities, 3 different economies, super powerful for the wrestling world in Mexico. And we are going to bring our show to those cities. Of course, having really, really strong partnerships. One of the things that we have done in Monterrey that are super important for the successful of those shows is the partnership that we have created with the most important media group in Monterrey, that the name is Multimedios. So using those relationships, we have really successful shows in Monterrey. And right now we are going to do the same thing in Tijuana, because we are having this partnership with Grupo Caliente. That Grupo Caliente are the owners of the soccer team and many different business in Tijuana. So it's not just producing the shows in those cities because with any reason. We are creating this kind of strategic alliances with those really, really strong groups in those cities.
Now, we had Reyes, obviously, last Saturday night. We heard great things about it. How did you think that show went? And it's just kind of maybe heading in towards a new era for AAA.
Well, basically, we produced a show in a baseball stadium. Was a good comeback with really strong names. We bring Taya also again to the company. We have right now his name, Johnny Superstar, John Hennigan, having a match against Hijo del Vikingo. Basically, there was over 5,000 people in the venue. We also produced a show for Fight. So basically, we were really happy. Of course, I think every time you produce a live event, it should be, it couldn't go straight perfectly. You know, you cannot run down the show exactly how you were expecting. Right now, for that event, the weather was really complicated, super complicated. A little bit of rain. The wind started really, really strong one day before. So even the production of the show and to put all the different structures was super complicated. But at the end, I think it was a really successful show. It's just the beginning of many storylines that we are going to start to run during this 30th anniversary. So maybe there are some people that they don't understand what was happening in the show, but believe me that there's a reason of the whole storylines that we are creating to put in the different shows that we are going to have during the whole year.
Is it important to have like some of the American stars, like you mentioned, Johnny Superstar, Taya Valkyrie, Kenny Omega's been there in the past, FTR obviously. Is it important to have some of the Americans on hand, or not so much? You just want to sprinkle them in on the big shows?
It's always important when you are trying to bring the footprint of your brand to different markets. It's always necessary to bring people that the American audience knows really well. You know, maybe for selling tickets in Mexico, it's not so important, but I'm going to give you an example. For sell pay-per-views in the United States, it's going to be, everybody starts to know a little bit who is Hijo del Vikingo. No? But if we put just challengers, just local challengers to Hijo del Vikingo, we are not creating that mysticism that our wrestler needs in the market. No. So when you can bring that kind of names as Johnny, or even we used to have before Kevin Cross, or even that kind of talent that are really, really well known for the American audience, it's important to expand our footprint. It's really important. We don't sell more tickets in Mexico bringing those kind of talent. It's much more important for the Mexican market, the local names. But for the pay-per-views, when we don't have a name as Kenny Omega or as Johnny, the numbers are totally different. The American audience is not interested in just watch Mexican wrestling.
How would you grade Conan's booking so far? Obviously, legendary wrestler, legendary booker, legendary performer. How do you think he's doing with the book?
It's really interesting. It's let me tell you something. I really respect his work. For me, Conan has been one of the biggest Mexican wrestler bookers the whole time. The problem is that I always said, wrestling is not the same as lucha libre. No? Lucha libre is caused by the origin is caused, good guys, bad guys, mixing storylines. And if you are not a Mexican, you don't understand that part. Of course, how you can present that to the American audiences is totally different. I'm a total fan of the work that Conan is doing right now in the company. It's not an easy work. There are not other bookers in Mexico, that's for sure. Even for the Mexican wrestlers, the word booker, they don't understand really well what's the meaning of that. So I think he is right now the one and only real booker in Mexico.
Now I know Lavi's got a ton of questions for you.
For sure. Thank you. So I think one of the amazing things about AAA is just its ability to build relationships, and of course, your ability to build and expand on those relationships. Something that we haven't had a chance to hear as much about, but we've certainly seen it, is your relationship with Disney and the Marvel characters. So how did that relationship come about to make the Marvel comic book and movie characters come alive as wrestling personalities, and might that expand to the US?
Well, I'm not allowed to talk much, to give a lot of information about our relationship with Disney, but let me tell you what I can say. Basically, the relationship with the people from Marvel started before the pandemic. We were trying to create something really huge, talking about live events for the Mexican market, and after that, to the whole world. We were talking about shows in the US, shows in Asia, and all the stuff, and the pandemic stopped all the plans that we have in the market. No? So it was complicated. Right now, we are just turning back to the real plans that we used to have before pandemic. We have been in meetings in the last month, at least in the last 30 days, trying to figure out how we are going to present this world, this universe world, this luchadores, Marvel characters world to the audiences. There's a lot of different shootings to explain the psychology of these characters, and the matches that the people have been watching is just maybe the 5% of the whole world that we are creating surrounding the Marvel Universe characters. So it's just a beginning, we are in that stage where we are like doing, how do you say, like we are making the beta test of how it's going to work. And I think maybe at the end of this year and at the beginning of 2023, the people is going to understand what we are trying to create with the people from Disney.
No, that's very exciting. Thank you. So certainly we know in Mexico that Lucha Libre is a very important part of Mexican culture. I think there's even been some accolades recently bestowed from the tourism department and some formalized relationships. I wanted to get your opinion on the following. I've had an idea for a while that Lucha Libre as a cultural influence might be bigger today in the US than WWE. What I mean by that is when you look at the broader culture from movies, cartoons, Nike sneakers, restaurants, masks, and so on, it seems to pervade more, like in terms of cultural references on let's say a national television program, you would probably find more Lucha Libre references in somebody wearing a mask or referring to somebody than you would WWE. What do you think of that?
Well, basically, it's difficult to know in terms of market which is the importance of something as lucha libre, because at the end of the day, as you said, it's part of the cultural heritage of a Mexican. And it could be something really close to the tequila, and it could be something close to this kind of Mexican crafts. No, I think it's important for sure. When you talk about Mexico, no, and I think that's one of the things. The Mexican Lucha Libre mask come to your mind. What's the value of that in the market? I'm not really sure. Of course, if we put the whole value of the market and the merchandise and you put all the companies and the history of the Lucha Libre on since 1930s, and if we gave to that a value, certainly should be something really close to WWE market. But in terms of how WWE has created his own universe and how they have monetized that world, we are far away from them. That there's an opportunity and a blank space, that's for sure, and that we need to be much more intelligent of how we can make this gap shorter, totally. But there are many steps ahead of us to try to create that market. No? Since merchandise, since consumer products, since how we can create more content in the US for the Mexicans, it's really important to create value for the US Hispanic market. That's the first step. After that, how you can enter to the general audience in the whole America. But that's for sure that for any company all around the world, America is one of the most important, well, not one of the most important market to enter.
So, in addition to Disney, looking at the broad U.S. landscape, I'd be hard to find a company besides AAA that's maintained such strong relationships with such a broad base of different organizations of different size and scale, from AEW to Impact to MLW to many wrestlers now coming into Game Changer Wrestling. So, how do you maintain such relationships, especially when it's a delicate political balance?
Well, basically, I think it's not difficult. The problem in the wrestling industry is that there are so many egos that sometimes the egos are bigger than relationships, and that's not our idea. We understand and we learn a lot when we develop Lucha Underground, and we understand really well that we are living in a world that is connected in every single way, even talking about relationships. So if we want to be coherentes, I don't know how you say that word in English. If you want to be aligned with your vision, you need to do that in the real life. So basically, we are totally open to make any kind of business and relationship with any wrestling organization that makes sense also to our business model. So that's the reason of why we are working. For us, if we see the American market, of course, we want to give our talent a global footprint, and also we want to give them more economic opportunities. So bring this relationship with MLW, with GCW, with even with Impact. We are super open to that. I cannot understand how in this year, in 2022, we are still close to that vision that we need to be unique, and we don't need to work with other organizations. That doesn't happen in the real world.
True. So prior to the pandemic, AAA was coming on hot in the U.S. for live events. There was an acclaimed event at the Hulu Theater at Madison Square Garden. Certainly, I believe there was a show booked at the Forum, if I'm naming the right venue, in L.A., which also I think is owned by MSG Corporation. We know that there's a show booked at WrestleCon. So sort of as the world opens up, what might be the plans for U.S. touring or even special events?
Well, for us, it's super important, the American market. If AAA wants to give the next step in terms of revenues, in terms of audience, in terms of richness, we should be in America as soon as possible. So basically, of course, WrestleCon is part of the strategy that we want to use to test the market. No, I think it's really important for us to understand, because I think we have two different audiences in America. I'm not sure if I'm correct or wrong, no, but at the end of the day, I think we have one market that, of course, is the wrestling market, and we also have the U.S. Hispanic nostalgia market. So how we can put those two markets together and make it live touring successful is something that I don't know yet. But we want to test the market, maybe not as big as we tried in the first instance with Madison Square Garden and all those places. I think we need to enter in more, how do you say, not secondary, but not those places that are super expensive, difficult unions. We learn a lot. But what happened if we try to enter in Chicago? What happened if we try to enter in Phoenix? What happened if we try to do a live tour in Texas? Of course, everything is about the know-who, the know-how. And I think we have learned a lot in the last 30 years. And for us, it's super important. And I can tell you that we are developing plans as we speak to have a couple shows in America before the end of the year and to have a live touring business for 2023 over there.
Very exciting. As somebody who not only knows their own business and market well, but really keeps an eye on global trends, something that we talk about a lot on the podcast is New Japan and, their various efforts in the US. As somebody that's watching what's going on, how do you think New Japan is doing, both in terms of their own efforts and in relationships with AEW and working with Access in the US market?
Well, wow. It depends how politic I want to be in this conversation, because I have my whole how do you say manner of thinking about it. I think that New Japan is an amazing organization, but the problem is that they are still too not so Western, They are. Let me explain you this way. Which is the most important and the guy who is in the top one of the Billboard list right now?
John, you're probably better at pop culture. Who is number one on the Billboard?
But should be Bad Bunny, or should be some guy who is in the reggaeton world, no? It will be my believing. So what I want to put on the table is the Spanish audiences, or if you are an American, you are starting to get used to hear your music in Spanish, no? And a mix between Spanish and English. When was the last time that a Japanese singer was so popular in the US market? I don't know. Right now, maybe the Korean people are doing something over there, no? And they are getting really, really, really global with the K-pop. But the Japanese culture, I think, hasn't reached other parts of the world in the way that the Latinos or even the Koreans have done. So I think that's really difficult for New Japan. I was watching the numbers, and the numbers are really similar to the eyeballs that we were doing when we launched Lucha Underground in a super, super small cable network, 70,000, 80,000. So how can you make your property global when your audiences are not enough in the biggest market in the world, no? So it's really interesting that they open this kind of door with the people from AEW. I think it will be complicated because the schedules of both companies are really complex. But let's see if in my opinion, AEW is a great window for New Japan. That's like my final point. If New Japan wants to enter in the general audience in America, there's still a lot of work to be done. And AEW, I think it's a first-rate step. But I think that to Japan, that kind of, how do you say, of appeal with the American market, it's still far away.
No, you make such a good point about audiences in America becoming more familiar with Latino culture and Spanish language. Didn't expect to make a reference to this on the podcast today, but my daughter loved Encanto. I love Encanto. We both listen to it on our computer while we're working or doing schoolwork or whatever it may be. And yeah, I can't imagine doing that with a Japanese song or movie anytime soon. Not because I wouldn't want to. I don't see the, where that would intersect. I think that there's something certainly to sort of the mystique of New Japan, but that makes a lot of sense in terms of acclimating to a U.S.
And
market.
let me tell you in a really quick manner, Latinos is part of the lifestyle in America, no? And when you are part of the lifestyle, you enter in those companies as Marvel, and you enter in those companies as Warner Media, and you need to enter in those big umbrellas to start to give you an audience in the general market. I don't see Japan, at least in the next 5 years, maybe in the year 7, something happens that Japan becomes the most trendy country in the world that could make New Japan's path much easier than right now. No? But as you said, Encanto, Coco, no, all the music, the urban music are super trendy in the, not just in America, in the whole world. No, so that opens in an easier way to the different properties to try to put our brands to the different markets. No.
So one of the things that we love talking about on the show is distribution, and certainly the distribution models have changed so much from not only cable television to streaming. I myself, I go back a long time with AAA as a kid. I watched on Galavision regularly.
Okay.
Back when I had a lot more time and could consume all wrestling, but AAA was definitely very appealing to watch in that format. So sort of as you expand your US footprint, certainly our friends at Fight, we've had Jeff Jarrett talking about Pick a Fight and Mike Weber talking about Fight and GCW, Brett Lauderdale talking about Fight as well. So we know that that's a very important pathway. But do you see a path for entry or re-entry on cable television?
Well, in the US, of course.
Yes.
We're just talking about the US. Okay. Yes, I think yes. The answer is yes. Basically, as you know, we were in a lawsuit, no, where our international rights were stalled, no, for at least the last couple of years. So right now, what we are trying is to expand our media rights, no, in America. We are having conversations with different players. As you know, in Mexico, we are working really well with the people from Warner Media. They have the rights for AW in America, no, so it's a good way. In another position, we have been working with Marvel and with the Walt Disney Company, and we are helping them to produce some kind of content for Disney Plus. So that's another way. In the other way, you have NBC Universal with Telemundo, no? It's complicated in that way because you have WWE in that world, no? So it's complicated, but we would like, of course, to end in a U.S. national Spanish language network, no? And Telemundo should be an option. But of course, there's a new merger between Televisa and Univision. There are many. We have a small deal with Pluto that we just expand in the last couple of weeks. There are so many different OTTs, no, working right now in the market. You have local markets like California, where Estrella Televisión it's really strong for the Hispanic community. So we are moving. Of course, we are moving. We are trying to figure out which is the best strategy, and not in the short term, thinking much more in the long term and in adding value to the company, no. And of course, not just in terms of the live events. What else can we create? Docuseries, as you said, Lucha Libre as itself, it's really big. How can we explain that to the world? Should be a docuseries? Should be a movie? Should be something else? Who can produce that? I think do you remember Mucha Lucha?
Yes.
that was super cool, no? It was a really, really strong manner of explaining to the child what was Lucha Libre, no? And right now that Nickelodeon are working with NFL and PGA, trying to create a much more appeal sports vision to the child, which will be something like that. So we are we are expanding, we are super, we have a really good team. What we have done in the last 2 years is to bring more professionals to our company, and we're ready to try to come back to America really soon and to do it in a bigger and in a much more successful way.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, as you're talking about it, it reminds me of something that John and I talked about when we were looking at WWE financials and live events, sort of as they were reemerging from the pandemic, and talking about maybe a Cirque du Soleil model might work for them, where you're doing regular touring and people aren't expecting feuds and so on. It's sort of like it comes to town or sets up residency in Las Vegas or somewhere like that, and it draws really well. And I could see something like Lucha Libre doing even better in such a model, just because of its natural flair and the masks, and it can be modified a little bit for even more so a family audience, where there's sort of the idea of conflict and violence, but it can sort of, the dial can be turned one way or another.
Well, as you can see, when you start to review the financials of WWE, and you see that the 90% of the revenue are just immediate rights, no? If you're a Mexican, your mind blown away, and you said, wow, the opportunities that you have in America doesn't happen in Latin America, no? And those kind of deals doesn't exist, not in a real way in the whole Latin America, no? Even putting all the countries together. So I think the numbers that AW or even WWE are making in media rights are totally insane for any other part in the world, no? So we need to figure out how we can create our own business model that can create the profit to make a good business and to bring another kind of investors to the table. So live events should be really important for Mexicans, are going to be really important for Mexicans, and are the, how do you say, the bones of the whole equation, Of course, it's really interesting what you have said. We are, even, I cannot talk a lot about it, but we are creating our own first venue, where we are going to produce daily shows. It's happening right now. We are going to give an announce, I think, in the next maybe 2 or 3 months. But as you said, it's something that should be happening because we are part of the culture, and you want to try to explain that to the foreigners. If you go to the numbers of the live events in Arena Mexico, you are going to see that the 40% of the people who goes to Arena Mexico are foreigners, no? So why we are not monetizing that part of the equation, And of course, we are going to give many announces in the next 6-8 months, no? Where you are going to see which is the strategy in a much clearer way that we have as a company. First of all, to make our anniversary really profitable. The second way, how we can start to monetize the foreigners in Mexico. And the third real big step that we're giving is how we can enter to America, having the specific media rights that are going to make this product successful. That's like the 3 milestones that we have in the company right now.
No, thank you. And you reminded me of a very important point you made in terms of foreigners and travel to see Lucha Libre. Just one example, my sister-in-law, she never watched pro wrestling. Maybe she can name some wrestlers from the 80s that were part of pop culture. But one day I went on Facebook and I saw she took a trip to Mexico, and half of her picture reel was a mask making seminar, and then she went to Arena Mexico, and my mind was blown away, and I was like, I had no idea. I've never been able to do that. So it really shows the reach of things.
When you go to, I don't like, well, I can't say I don't like it. I don't know really well the tango, But every time I go to Argentina, I need to go to the tango. It's exactly the same thing. When you are in Mexico, you need to go to the pyramids, to the trajineras, and to a Mexican wrestling show. It's part of the culture. So in terms of that, the Arena Mexico is just monetizing that in Mexico City. But what happened with the different parts that are super, how do you say, hot for the tourists, So we are working on that.
Oh, it makes sense. Let me turn it over to John.
What is the latest on the Crash promotion and you guys teaming up?
With the Crash?
Mm-hmm.
Well, basically, let me tell you something. We have been in a really, how do you say, roller coaster relationship with them, Since maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I remember when I was working in Lucha Underground and Conan was dismissed because some problems with the production company. And after that, he started to bring some kind of talent to the Crash. And after that, we enter in a conversation with Conan, and right now he's one of the most important executives in the company. So life is a roller coaster. There are good times, there are bad times. And right now, I think it was a good moment to finish our relationship with the Crash because our vision wasn't aligned. So when your vision is not aligned with one of your local, how do you say? For me, the Crash is a local promotion in Tijuana. That's what it is. So we hasn't aligned that vision. They were trying to do something different. And we have another promoter that his name is Mario Fuentes and his company is EMW. We are trying to produce this big show in Tijuana called Triple Mania Tijuana with the Xolos. So I think we are in a moment that our vision is not aligned.
As far as like your big stars and big guys, who do you think like we think of as Americans? It's like, would it be Psycho Clown? Is he like the big star, if you will, of everybody?
Well, wow, complicated question. I think Psycho Clown it's much more appeal for the Mexican market. It's going to be really difficult for an American to understand the psychology behind Psycho Clown. And I will say that Psycho Clown is much more like La Parca used to be, And La Parca, not Adolfo Tapia. I'm talking about La Parca, who was running the character for the last 20 years. So I think that's going to appeal to the US Hispanic nostalgia market. I think there are other kind of characters that will be much more appeal with the American market. Maybe, I don't know, Hijo del Vikingo should be one, and as it happens with Phoenix and Pentagon Jr., we understand really well. We start to understand a little bit the American market with Lucha Underground, and I think we have a really good formula. You need to introduce characters as the people, as the Mexicans need, They need their Blue Demons and their Santos and their Psycho Clowns and La Parcas, and they also need something like Rey Mysterio, So we are working really hard on that. It was a difficult question to answer.
There's a lot of guys that we're very familiar with, like you said, Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix. Do those guys being in AEW? I mean, obviously that helps AAA, but is it like a AAA guy in AEW, or do you think that fans consider them AEW wrestlers? You know what I mean?
No, for sure. In Mexico, they are AAA wrestlers. In America, they are AEW wrestlers. No, everything depends about the, how do you say, the territory where you are, the reality that you are living, and the reach of the media. No, and in terms of media, of course, AEW is much bigger than AAA in America.
For you, is the relationship with AAA, is that with the AEW and AAA, is that extremely important to keep the a good relationship with Tony Khan and those guys?
It's extremely important in a manner that you need to understand that if you want to bring another kind of talent to Mexico that haven't been here before, yes, of course, no. The kind of talent that AEW has at this moment, it's extraordinary. It wasn't even a possibility to bring that kind of talent to Mexico without Tony Khan in the market, no? So for us, of course, our relationship with them are super important in terms of how we can offer a real opportunity to our talent, that there's a path and there's a way for them to have a really better economical situation in the US working for AEW, and in the other way also with the other promotions, you know. I'm going to give you the example of Laredo Kid. For him, it's really important that he's allowed to work with other US companies in the US because he's making money because of that, you know. So for us, it's really good to have these kind of relationships, to be working everybody together, to work in the agenda of each talent in order to make the talent much more comfortable in an economical way, no?
Basically, kind of keep them happy. You know what I mean? And keep them working, could be the States. And it makes for better life for you guys because, you know, they're happy, you guys are happy.
It's something that doesn't go against our interests, you know. Our interest is to have the talent happy, to have them working, to have them making money. And meanwhile, we cannot offer salaries at WWE or at AW. When you start to put all the different pots together, makes a decent number.
So Nick Khan had mentioned that they're open for business as far as working with anybody. Would you guys ever consider working with WWE? I mean, would that ever even be an option, you think?
With WWE?
Yes.
Well, we have been in conversations with WWE many times. But their manner of thinking, it's, how do you say? They have their own way, you know, since 1996 when they start relationship with AAA, no? After that, in 2008, 2010, when I met for the first time to call the Marco and Shane McMahon, no? Until when Lucha Underground was launched, there was conversations with them. And what I understand, it's super respectful from them, no? They have their own universe and they don't like to mix their own universe with any other brand property. No, it doesn't exist, no? So it's part of their culture, and it's my understanding that it will be super complex or super almost impossible to work between different kind of promotions because it doesn't make sense to them, no? In which way, no?
Yeah, went back when they had their original working with them, it's because WCW was kind of, was kicking their butt, and they could kind of use a great
But
promotion like play.
let's be fair. When you are making $1.1 billion in revenues and you have an EBITDA of 150 or something like that, you can buy wherever you want, no? So reality is, do you need to work with someone or do you need to buy them, no? So I think they are in a position that nobody else is in the market. Nobody else has been in the market, no? Even talking about AW, they are far away still from a revenue standpoint, but they are doing a great job for 2 years and much more in pandemic, no? So the wrestling landscape is going to be really interesting. I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, this thing about WWE Network, I think that was like a perfect move for WWE to try to take over the wrestling world all around the world, no? But right now that WWE Network is just part of Peacock and all that stuff, I think they don't have any kind of acquisition in the short term in his mind, no? So let's see. We are in a moving world, and the landscape change really fast. And there always been rumor. I was just checking the numbers that MGM was sold to Amazon in 33 times EBITDA value, and you say that's insane, no? So we don't know if WWE is going to sell. We don't know if they are trying to make a bigger EBITDA because of that. We don't know what is in Vince's head. There are many things happening, no?
Yeah, you never quite know. And obviously, like you said, they don't really need to work with anybody. Even though Nick Khan said they're open for business and would work with anybody, they don't really need to with the the billions that they're pulling in right now.
And when you see the numbers in social networks, no, well, of course, we exist, but it's Goliath versus David, and we are still really small David. So let's see what happens.
So what's next? What's for you and for AAA? What's next on the horizon?
As I told you, we have three really big milestones. No, the first one is to have a really good 30th anniversary. The second one is how we can make our product much more appeal, and how we can enter in the U.S. Hispanic market in a real and in a strong way. That's the second one. The third one, it's basically all the different opportunities that we are going to have, trying to create different kind of content, because I think one of the opportunities and one of the advantages that we have in the market, as you said, is the cultural appeal of the Mexican wrestling. So we are having these kind of discussions to create other kind of content for our properties.
As far as where everybody can find AAA and yourself and all the social media, please give us all the plugs.
Well, basically, we are in Instagram, we are on Facebook, we are in Twitter, we are. I hope to be in YouTube in a worldwide basis really soon. We are just expecting a couple months to finish that deal. But well, my Twitter, I'm not so active, but I really read all the comments. It's Dorian Roldán, AAA, in Twitter, and also in Instagram. And what else? And I think that's it.
All right, great stuff, Dorian. Thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it. Great to have you on.
I'm sorry for my English. How do you say? It's not my primary language, and I try to be really clear about it. But sorry for that.
No, not at all. Excellent. Very, very good. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank
Dorian,
you.
Thank you. Everything sounded great. We really appreciate your time. And candidly, when I was making a list of sort of our dream guests for 2022, you were right at the top of the list. So it's really very satisfying and such a great opportunity. Thank you again.
It's a total pleasure. And I hope to be again here soon, trying to give an advantage of what has been happening in the last year. And thank you, John. Thank you, Labi. And hope to see you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Now, as far as the news for the week, as we kind of finish up and wrap up here, what's the latest on the live event attendance and upcoming show previews?
Yes. So, wow, that was an amazing interview. So I'm like getting going again. But one thing that I want to focus on, and for our audience that loves the live events, we're certainly going to come back to it. I have the spreadsheet ready to go. One interesting event that I wanted to focus on today was the show at Cicero Stadium for Warrior Wrestling. It was a really interesting fold out because first, when Warrior booked the show took place on the 12th of February. I was thinking sort of like, what are their expectations of it and so on, and was watching closely. There wasn't an open ticket map, but you could see sort of like you could buy first row, second row, and how many seats. So right before the show, I saw that rows 1 to 3 were sold out and 4th row and beyond were available, which made sense for a promotion of that size. And then in looking at Cage Match, whoever had uploaded it, they wrote 2,000 people. I was like, 2,000 people. So I was looking at some of the videos online, and you can see that for whatever part of the stadium, I'm not sure if they shuffled people to a certain area or maybe it was a tight camera shot. It did look pretty full. So I was thinking, maybe there's something that I'm missing here. But for the time period or for this purpose, I'm going to lean on the observer number, which was 600, which makes a lot of sense. So I think that's like an interesting content point to digest. And certainly, I mean, we love to have these amazing guests coming, but it certainly we'll come back to it and we'll dive very, very deep into live events and previews.
What about ROH? I heard that they are planning on returning. Joe Koff says they're returning. Ian Riccaboni said they're returning. Are they really returning to live events? Is this really happening?
Yeah, so from what I understand, when Ian Riccaboni, I think they called it Ian Riccaboni and the Booker. I'm not sure how that all worked out, but that there was an announcement on Facebook that was later written up on the website that they'd be returning to live events after the Super Card of Honor. So somebody had an interesting point with like, okay, so they let everyone go from contract and then sort of bring them back on a per event basis. So I think it'll be something really interesting to watch to see what size venues they book, who the talents are, and how ultimately they draw.
So they also keep talking about their Hall of Fame, and they keep inducting, quote unquote, people into the Hall of Fame. Is there going to be a physical Hall of Fame? Is there going to be guys showing up? Because it's interesting. They keep saying, that, these guys are in the Hall of Fame. So far, part of the Ring of Honor Hall of Fame, the Briscoe brothers, Samoa Joe, Bryan Danielson, and CM Punk. Kind of a who's who of ROH there, and the real prominent guys, especially when I was going. These were like the stars of ROH. What is up with this? I mean, are they going to just do TV shows about it? Are they actually going to have inductions? Are they actually going to get some sort of award? What's up with the Ring of Honor Hall of Fame?
No, that's a good point, and exactly my peak Ring of Honor interest from 2003 to 2005 was exactly these guys. So many special memories of that. So for right now, it's basically TV content and goodwill, which both are sort of free at this point. So it's a smart thing to do. Everyone likes those posts. It makes you feel like, oh, maybe I should go see if I could find their TV show or watch it online, because those are some of my favorite matches. But it also makes it feel like it's a nostalgia promotion, because we don't really know who's going to be at what events. A little bit is emerging, of course, in terms of the Supercard show, but sort of moving forward from there. There's no indication of a physical building. What I would guess maybe is like at a Supercard of Honor, you can show the videos and sort of have like temporary stands or something like that where you're honoring them, like as people are coming in the building. Samoa Joe, you can reach out to him. Maybe CM Punk and so on would be available, or Bryan Danielson. Certainly the Briscoes are available, so maybe they'll do something physically with them to honor them. But it's not impossible, but right now I see it mostly as like TV content.
So what's going on with CZW? Because it looks like Mike Johnson reported that it was almost going to be sold. Is this true?
Yeah, so he reported that our friends at GCW and Orange Crush, their close partner on the Jersey Championship Wrestling, were looking to buy the company. It makes sense, like when you think about it, like the way that Jersey operates now before GCW shows. Certainly, like I would think CZW would have like more name cachet. Also, you look at their social media, like CZW, it's diminished in terms of number of views, but on YouTube they have like a huge presence. So like if GCW were to have bought it and sort of take that over, then you have like a whole nother outlet, in terms of reaching people. But, and this might need to be confirmed again, but I think the last time I was looking at trademarks or copyrights, those public resources, I think it was trademarks, it looked like Stonecutter Media held the trademarks to CZW, from what I understood. So it seems a little murky. Like, would you sell your trademarks to another company, but then they'll sort of be your company? I've often questioned, is it owned by Stonecutter Media? Apparently not. That's who does their those controversial pay-per-views where they kind of, it sounds like, come up with the most delicious names for, CZW is not too far to say bloodiest, but sometimes they'll take like a regular women's match and make it sound like more than what it is, upsetting some people. But I'm not sure how those negotiations would have unfolded, with a murky ownership, but I'm sure if it got pretty far, that was sorted out between a little bit between GCW and Orange Crush and CZW and whoever else is involved.
Interesting, because with Brett used to work there. You know what I mean? It's an interesting thing. Like, wow, the guy used to be the referee for CCW might end up, or almost ended up owning it. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, not only the referee, but like without having been like a close CCW watcher, like and Brett talked about the first time he was on with us a few months ago, like when he entered that cage during like Cage Match of Death with Nick Gage, like it felt like all of the like cachet of CCW was sucked out and transplanted to GCW, and then they just shot up like a rocket from there.
Totally agree. Bit of a misstep by CCW to allow that to happen, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounded like it was like some people were saying it's okay, some people said no. To the owner of CCW at the time, it was a surprise. So kind of a wild story.
So Control the Narrative, ran by EC3. Him and Braun Strowman have announced a new TV deal, saying that it's imminent. Obviously, Control the Narrative is their new promotion, as they're announcing that as well. So it's kind of coinciding, the new promotion and the TV deal. What's the latest on this?
Yeah, no, and as you know, thank you. A few weeks ago, you put Control the Narrative on my radar. I was like totally at a loss, but we're learning about it as it unfolds. Certainly, EC3 is a name, but Braun Strowman is sort of one of those rare names that's a game changer, no pun intended, where, if you have a meeting with a TV executive and they say, who do you have? You're like, Adam Scher, the guy that was Braun Strowman. They're like, whoa, didn't he headline WrestleMania like 2 years ago? So it's sort of like one of those people that opens doors. It seemed like it might be more of a special. So, putting aside any controversy that emerged or ratings or whatever, but maybe something like not necessarily on Vice, but like that same idea, like MLW Fightland on Vice, where you have that special, and like if it does well, it opens more doors. I don't know, doing a show at Gillies on WrestleMania, I think it's on WrestleMania weekend when there's so many other shows at Gillies in Dallas, like I don't know, it doesn't seem like a hot start, and it kind of feels like it dims like Adam Scher's spotlight a little bit to be involved at this point. Not to be negative about the company, but I'm just curious to see how this all unfolds and who's behind it a little bit more.
Definitely. And what's the latest on United Wrestling Network? What's going on with UWN?
Yeah, so David Marquez, his successful championship wrestling from Hollywood, and then they had Arizona, and we sort of talked about where Atlanta was going, but it seems like it's going somewhere different now. But now it'll all be championship wrestling presented by CarShield. So rather than like regional, sort of like it becomes a national. It's a curiosity because it seemed like Hollywood sort of had that national footprint, and then sort of there was paired programming, like where Arizona would be an hour before, an hour after Hollywood in the Arizona market, and maybe Atlanta would be paired with Hollywood. So by combining the three, I'm not sure how many additional markets they'll get. It actually feels like, I mean, I'm sure they did these calculations to do it, but it kind of feels like you're letting go some of that like concurrent programming, but you're building a little bit of your national footprint by having like just one consolidated. And of course, if you don't have to tape in different regions, and if you're bringing in talent from outside the region in terms of hotels and flying people in, as Dave Marquez, it's about money or revenue, however he put it. So that makes sense in the end.
It's very, I don't know, a lot of possibilities there, but I don't know if they're heading in the right direction or not. But what is the latest on IWTV?
Yeah, so we don't hear as much about IWTV as we used to, especially like their flagship brand, Uncharted Territory. I think they're doing a smart move, sort of moving out of the Rhode Island, Massachusetts Uncharted Territory area for their fourth season, which will be in the Southeast. I think in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, or around that area. I love to say Soddy Daisy because I think of like Terry Gordy and his birthplace, which is awesome. But Dylan Hales, who was with our friends at PW Ponderings, connected with them for a number of years. Everyone loves his dad also, who's a big wrestling fan. He's one of the people connected to IWTV, so it makes sense. and he has the SCI tournament, or I might be mixing up with the basketball tournament, but he has a tournament of note in that region every year too. So it just makes sense. He knows the market, and it's a good idea to get out there and sort of mix it up in terms of talent and the way that it's presented.
All right. I think that is it for this week, Lavi. Let's head towards the plugs. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website, tmptempire.com. And of course, patreon.com/tmptempire. Lavi, what do you got?
Yes. So, of course, we are the official business podcast of SE Scoops. Follow me on Twitter, Lavimarg, LAVIEMARG, and check out some of my long form pieces and analysis at lioncubjobsearch.com.
All right. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening.